Grandmaster Hikaru Nakamura is entering into this game with his better half, Atusha Porkashian. This is round 9 of the FIDE Candidates, round 8 of the FIDE Candidates 2026. Hikaru takes on Fabiano Caruana, his countrymate, and Fabi enters in also with his team. Christian, we have Uparin, his girlfriend, and Fabi comes in to the board now. This is going to be a very exciting clash between the two Americans. The first time they played in this tournament, it was Caruana who managed to win. Fabi is currently 1.5 points behind Javokir Sindarov, so he would definitely want to beat Hikaru here. A handshake and off we go. Hikaru has had a pretty not so great event, 5 draws and 2 losses in the first half. He opens the game with pawn to c4, and Fabi plays pawn to c5, the symmetrical English. Now knight comes out to f3. And let's see how Fabi deals with this. Knight to c6. The second half of the tournament is always the most intense in such candidates because players will go all out for that first spot. Pawn takes d4. He takes on d4. And now knight takes d4. It'll be interesting to see what setup Fabi chooses here. You can play pawn to g6, but you can also go pawn to e6 and open up the bishop this way. Knight comes out to c3. And now pawn to e6 has been played. We have bishop to f4. The bishop is on this diagonal here. And black goes pawn to d5. In such positions, if you jump with your knight, I have always e5 that can be played. So pawn takes pawn taken here, and now it's very important to play with the knight, because if you take back with the pawn here, then knight db5 is very dangerous. So that's why knight takes. Hikaru takes on c6, attacking the queen. Fabi takes back with the pawn. The pawn structure is slightly compromised, but that's okay. Bishop comes back to d2. And Hikaru hopes to play pawn to e4 and then just claim that his structure is slightly better than white's. So bishop b4 played here, pinning. Claim that his structure is better than black's. So let's see what Hikaru does here. He plays queen to a4, still in his preparation, attacks the pawn on c6. And Caruana goes pawn to a5. He's ready to give up the pawn here so that there is bishop d7 and he's better. And Hikaru plays pawn to e4. Very interesting question here is that what exactly is Hikaru having as an edge? It's difficult to say. Knight c3, he takes with the pawn, attacks the bishop can drop back. Bishop e7. Once again, taking the pawn is met with bishop d7, and black would have very good compensation. So Hikaru plays bishop e2, trying to prepare for castling, but the bishop would be hanging. Fabi quickly castles here. It already feels like the position is very, very even, very equal, very even. But now Hikaru plays his bishop to f4. The bishop takes control of an important diagonal on the board. Black goes bishop a6. He takes, bishop takes a6. Rook takes a6. And now rook to d1. Hitting the queen. The queen can of course go to b6. It definitely is a question like, what has Hikaru's opening given him? Nothing much, I would say. Here he castles, and Fabi can play just queen b5, put his queen on c4. I don't think he can be worse here. Yes, he does that exactly. Queen comes to c2. One thing that is working in white's favor is that the b file is open and he controls bishop on this b8 square. So bishop c5 played by Caruana. Maybe he could have also placed his queen here, but then there's rook d4 and doubling, so that's not great. Bishop c5, and now pawn to c4. He goes back, queen b7. The bishop comes to e5 for Hikaru. A little bit of a miscommunication it feels with black pieces. Maybe just rook a8 goes queen e7. I was wondering if rook a8 with the idea of rook d8 makes sense, but queen c3 may be putting pressure here. So slight pressure, queen e7. And now queen to d3. The queen is looking to enter in on the d7 square. And pawn comes up to f6. Now white puts the bishop on the d6 square, offering a trade. Fabi takes it. Bishop takes d6, queen takes d6, and we are entering into an endgame. Takes, rook takes d6. How dangerous is this endgame for black? Because white's rook is active, attacking this pawn, and rook b8. Fabi does not care for the pawn. He quickly wants to activate his rook. Rook takes e6, maybe king f7. He goes rook b2. And one thing that is not in Hikaru's favor is his back rank. So whenever he wants to activate this rook, he needs to waste one move. Rook e7 played. Now this could threaten a mate. So he cuts off the king on the 7th rank. Rook b6 is a good move. And now you may want to even double your rooks on the 7th rank. So black also has their trump cards. Rook a7. Attacking the pawn on a5. Fabi takes on a2. Time wise, he has 14 minutes. He has to make 13 more moves. Hikaru has 28 minutes. He plays his pawn to h3. And now very important to play rook a b2. Giving up this pawn and maybe at some point even trading the rooks. The main point of course is the rook d1 is met with rook b1. But he blunders here with h5. And this is a huge mistake. Because now it doesn't feel like it, but rook d1, and this is a winning position for Hikaru. Suddenly everything's changed. You can see Hikaru there. He's definitely seeing, calculating things. And Caruana, from a very normal position, has just completely messed this up. Rook bb2. Fabi sees something that Hikaru doesn't. Perhaps check, very important move. Forcing the king to h7, and now rook d7 to attack the pawn on g7. Caruana takes on f2, rook takes g7. The king can go to both h6 and to h8. He prefers to go to h8 because to h6 maybe h4 could just checkmate. So king h8, and now we have a check. Here, the king must move to g8 and move 33. Caruana has 12 minutes. Hikaru has 20 minutes. King to f8. And now the rooks are going to switch their spots. Rook f7. Very nice move. And after king g8, you go with the other rook to g7. Another nice move. And after king h8, you go rook g6. A beautiful move here. And now the rook defends. The pawns are being attacked. He goes rook f4. Caruana loses a pawn. I think trading a rook makes sense because otherwise the two rooks are very strong. And now the c6 pawn is hanging. And also rook h6, rook h5 is hanging. So everything is falling apart. King g7. He takes the pawn on c6. And Fabi is now 2 pawns down. He goes rook c2. You can attack a5 and h5. Yeah, Hikaru knows that after move 40, he now has 30 extra minutes to make this work. And he's not going to let this go. He's going to score his first win in the tournament. King g6. And you can already take the pawn on a5. He takes it. Drops the advantage a bit, but that's nothing. I mean, he's just winning. Shouldn't push e5 though. Rook e5 is a good move because e5 somehow with h4 and the king coming in would lead to a draw. So rook e5, h4 played, and now king f2, check, king f3, check. And now this very nice assessment by Hikaru that he's winning. King g4, he's going to chop off the pawn on h4, rook g3 check. He takes the pawn here, rook takes g2, and with two extra pawns, you know, if there were f and h pawns, it's a draw, but because they are e and h pawns, it's winning for white. So rook f5, rook comes to g1, and we have rook to f4. The idea is rook g4, he plays rook a1, and now Hikaru calmly brings his king back, gives a check again. I mean, for Fabi, he can literally see his dream of reaching the World Championship disintegrating right before him. Because while Sindarov was playing so well in this tournament, he was still in with a chance, you know, because it was just 1.5 points. But now with this loss, he would very well let Sindarov take a 2-point lead in the tournament. Of course, the big clash then becomes Fabi versus Sindarov, which whenever it will happen. And there's still a technical chance for Fabi to overcome that deficit. We'll see. Rook f5 played by Hikaru. His plan is, if there are checks, he goes rook here. Maybe just rook f3. Rook comes here, and now h4. Hikaru is doing it calmly and coolly. He knows this is winning. Now just king e3. He goes from the top. Can settle down on f4. King f4. And rook h5. He went king g4, rook e5, and now calmly rook f4. Fabi waits here. The king comes back, defends the pawn. And he's coming now from the other side. So it takes time to win such positions. But all you need is some bit of patience, you know. King f6, and I think Hikaru has plenty of it. Rook g5, very nice move. Trade here is leading to a lost endgame after king d4. So rook a1, he goes rook f5. King comes here, and now h5 check. King h6. And it's time to push your other pawn slowly and steadily. And in fact, now at some point you may not even need the h pawn. With the e pawn pushing ahead, it's completely winning. e5 played, and Caruana, I believe, has no chance here to hold himself and can very well resign the game. With this, Hikaru will score his first win. A handshake there, and Hikaru moves to 3.5 points in this tournament. A very good win, I must say, from a completely equal position. One that one could have never imagined that Hikaru would have won that after the opening, but he kept trying. And it does remind a bit about his double rook endgame against Wei. Fabi, on the other hand, it's very nice of him to see him there still analyzing after such a heartbreaking loss. This would be tough for him, but he still has an outside chance to qualify by winning this tournament. He has to go all out, and we'll see if that happens or not.